Well, hello, and welcome to the third edition of the ISPA Reopening Town Hall Series. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Frank Pitsikalis. I'm the chairman of the ISPA Foundation and also the CEO and founder of Resort Suite. I'm filling in today for our ISPA chairman, Garrett Merceberger, who's on a well-deserved getaway with his wife, Heather, as they celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary. Today, our conversation will be centered on financial planning and recovery. We have a great group of panelists that will introduce themselves and share their reopening experiences. As well, we've selected throughout this town hall series, selected spa operators that have opened their operations so they can share real boots on the ground, practical experiences, and really help us sort of with what we can prepare for and what's ahead. We have, as we begin this fantastic panel discussion, I do want to give my appreciation and thanks to Circadia and ReadyCare and their generous support of this town hall. At the end of our seminar today, we're going to be giving away some great products from both of these amazing companies. So I'd like to get started here with our panel discussion. I'm thrilled to pass things over to Patrick Huey, who's really done an amazing job as our moderator on these town halls and will do so for us again today. He's got to share a few housekeeping items about our hour together. So go ahead, Patrick, over to you.
Thank you so much, Frank. I appreciate it. And happy anniversary to Garrett and his wife. That's wonderful. Just a few housekeeping notes. I know we've all been on many Zoom calls, so just make sure that you are muting your system so that we can hear the wonderful advice from our panelists, our fabulous, wonderful panelists. Also, we want you to participate in this town hall, so please use your chat function to send us questions, which will work into our conversation today. We're on speaker view, so you can only see us and you can't see anyone else, so you get our lovely faces for the next hour. And also, I want to give you a view of how we've structured these town halls. And we've brought in people with different views, different opinions from different parts of the business, from day spas to multi-unit spas to resort and hotel spas. And we do that so that we have a wide view of what's happening in the industry. And what you should take back from this are the pieces that work for your business and consult with your laws, your states, your cities, and use the information that makes sense for your operation. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in with our panelists today, and they will introduce themselves as we move through today's questions. So Michelle, I'm going to go to you first.
Yay.
Yes, welcome, Michelle. Have you faced any concerns over rent or lease agreements as a result of the COVID-19 crisis? And if so, how are you navigating those concerns?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Kinney, and I'm a member of the Trilogy Spa Holdings team. They let me put Senior Vice President on my email signature, and for that, I'm very grateful, but I work with a great team. We are in a unique situation at Trilogy where we operate inside hotels, but in addition to management agreements, we also have lease operations. So while 5 of our locations are currently open, none of those leased operations are currently open. They're in New York and LA. But I can tell you some of the experiences I've had with our different landlords up until this point, and hopefully give some insight to some of you out there that are also doing lease operations, as I know Scott also has this type of business. First, make sure that you are in communication with your landlord. If you haven't been, an outreach is necessary. They are getting this kind of conversation from every single tenant that they've had. Everyone's been very, very open. We have a certain circumstance where rent is not being paid while we're closed, but we are taking those rent payments, and once we reopen, it's being split out over a certain time frame. We have another instance where our contract did have a rent abatement section, so we were able to exercise that clause, which was very, very helpful, and a note to myself for future lease negotiations. And then a third option was not paying rent while we were closed and transitioning over from a flat rent to a percentage of revenues, because we all know that this is going to be a long recovery, and that's helpful to us to make sure that we become a viable business. At the end of the day, we're doing all of these measures to make sure that we as a company remain viable. And a couple other things, if you have not applied for a PPP and you are under those qualifications as a small business owner, that is June 30th, and there is a portion, 40% of your loan proceeds can be used up for rent or utilities. So if you haven't looked into that, I strongly encourage you to reach out to your banker and understand what options are available to you.
Michelle,
and then, yes.
Michelle, can you explain what the PPP is for those on the call who may not know what those?
I can. It's through the CARES Act. I think it's version 2.0, and it is for employers who have 500 or less employees. And you apply for the loan. It is no collateral. It pays you for 2.5 times your payroll of all the employees you had for a specified amount of time. 2019 as a calendar year, if that's the choice you chose to take. It gives you a loan, and you have just passed on June 5th an update to that, but you have from 8 to 24 weeks to use those funds for payroll, 60% of them, and then 40% for rent and utilities. And then you apply for forgiveness through the SBA and your bank. And that forgiveness, it's then taken away and you do not owe any money as long as you follow the certain criteria. And then for whatever's left over from that loan that you do not use for payroll or rent and utilities, then converts into a loan at 1%, and it's now with a 5-year term. So for small businesses that are holding on and need to do something like that, it's something to look into, as well as there's the disaster relief loans available through the SBA for small businesses as well.
So Michelle, and just to clarify, the PPP loan is for US-based spas only?
Correct. Correct.
Perfect. Scott, do you have any color you can add to how you're handling the rent and lease situation in Beach?
Of course. I'm Scott Duncan. I'm the president of Spa Gregory's. We have 2 locations, one in Newport Beach and one in Rancho Santa Margarita. They're both in Orange County. And Michelle said it very well and explained the PPP program probably better than most people I've ever heard explain it. So thank you, Michelle.
A lot of hours on a call.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It is a fantastic program. I mean, for us in particular, we did not get any rent abatement from our landlord. So that was a little bit difficult at the beginning of time. And our whole approach was to figure out how to make the revenue. As a day spa, we can't rely on any other kind of source of revenue. So we kind of kicked into gear and started retooling our company. Instead of being a spa, we're trying to prove ourselves to the County of Orange as an essential company. So we started providing essentials to the community for purchase with things such as disinfectants and hand sanitizers and face masks. And we were a little bit of ahead of the curve on that. So we did okay with that. And we were able to contribute a great deal of that product to our community as well, to the senior centers, et cetera. But soon after that, we also applied for the PPP loan, and we did receive it. It's a fantastic program. The only challenge that I think we had, or I had with it, is when we received the loan, we had to spend the money within a 4 payroll period, 8 weeks, and it was a tight 8 weeks. And the rules had not changed, as you explained, Michelle, like they are now. Had I known that, we would have really approached the PPP from a completely different perspective. But we were very tight about making sure 75% of that went to payroll and 25% went to rent as well. And then we spent the money, and then literally like 2 days later, they said we didn't need to spend the money. So we actually experienced something that was very stressful, because when you're trying to spend money and you don't have a whole lot to do, that's very stressful in itself. And then you get to that stage of, what are we going to do now? Because we're not quite open. We are open in one of our locations now, but for hair services only. But the revenue may not support us like we really needed that PPP money to support us now rather than 8 weeks ago, right? So we experienced the same thing. But that said, we're still very grateful that we had the opportunity to take advantage of that. And it did help with keeping some people off of furlough and to help with our rent as well.
Thank you so much, Scott. I want to shift gears a little bit and move straight into what you're going to have to look at from a financial perspective when you're ready to reopen your businesses. And so, Ella, I want to come to you on what sort of ROIs did you have to establish for your GM and for ownership to make the reopening of the spa a viable option for the business? And if you can explain your approach to how you establish those ROIs, that would be very helpful for the people on the call and for myself. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ella Kent. I'm actually currently the rooms director here at Sea Island in Georgia, and I served as the spa director for 5 years. So I'm pretty familiar with kind of both ends of the equation. Sea Island has membership and it has guests, and so we had to decide if we were going to open first to the public or open first to our members. And we chose a measured approach, and so in the spa, we opened up a week before the hotel did to only our membership, which a much smaller group of people. It allowed us to bring people in a little bit slower, and we presented that to our GM as kind of a test to understand how many hands it took to do all of the PPE and cleaning procedures that you needed, so that we didn't overcommit and create chaos, both with our service providers and with our guests. We didn't want to do that. But our business has changed significantly because we're heavily dependent on group business in the summertime and very, very busy. And of course, all of that business has dried up. But there was a lot of pent-up demand by social guests. And happily for the spa, social guests tend to spend more time in the spa and more money in the spa. And so when we looked at our calculations, it made sense to go ahead and open the spa to members as a test, and then to slowly ramp up and gather as much as we could, because we opened up the hotel at 90% occupancy, which I wouldn't advise. But so it was pretty easy that Georgia had opened up spas a month prior. So we had the legal, we had the plan in place, and we had the guests in place. So we just did a slow ramp up, and it worked out really well.
Perfect. And I'm gonna skip to Frank on this, because I know you work with many different operators in your capacity at Resort Suite. What were you seeing in terms of ROIs, and what information was put in front of ownership groups and GMs to establish a reopening plan for the spas you work with?
I think what I've seen really is spas have really taken a hard look at their business, and that's so important. And especially now, I felt, as I've talked to a lot of our clients that have opened, and as we've gone and analyzed, even historically, some have actually opened quite early. One of our clients opened in early May 5th, and because they're on a reserve, so they kind of focus, they follow the federal laws but not the state laws, and so they were able to open. The interesting thing is that they really took an approach of really analyzing their mix of services that they were going to offer, just to ensure that they would maximize profitability. Again, as you're looking at the impact to the spa, in some jurisdictions, there are longer times to turn over treatment rooms, and so you're losing that space and that time, and that could lead to one whole service per day per service provider. So as they were bringing their staff aboard, just like Ella, on a real measured approach, bringing half their staff back. In some cases, they were actually putting staff members, assigning them 2 treatment rooms. So as they'd finish one service, even if they turned over, they could actually start another service quite quickly while the other treatment room was being sanitized. So, not just that, it's really looking at that profitability per service. So you're looking at length of service, because obviously the longer treatments, the fewer times you have to turn over rooms. So they had cut out all express treatments. So it was all these 60 or 90-minute treatments. They really focused on only their signature treatments. So again, higher profit. And even though they lost those first 4 days of May, when they looked at May 2019 to 2020, they had to hit 80% of their revenues in 2020. But the really interesting thing was their profit was almost the same. So that just really shows that when you really look and take that approach of profitability and really looking at your menu mix, I think it's important. It can really obviously impact your bottom line and results.
That's great feedback, Frank. And I'm gonna come to you, Alan, because I think Frank brought up something that's really interesting about how the space is being utilized to yield more profit with seemingly less space within that facility. And I know you run a very tight ship down there in Houston, Marquis. So I would love to hear your approach to how you've approached this opening process, what you're looking at, and how you're operationally setting up for the financial success that Frank just alluded to.
So thank you and good afternoon. Alan Hunt from Marriott Marquis Houston. As you can see in the background, that's my office along with the spa. We operate a 1,000-room hotel that is very conference heavy Monday through Thursday and suddenly swings into what you see behind us, a leisure resort Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the challenge for us in thinking about opening was conferences dried up. There is no conference. You know, how are you going to sell it early in the part of the week? So we elected, after developing a business plan that sort of stripped out, and we modeled that business plan on an 8-week period in 2019 at exactly the same time, and then started stripping out stuff that we knew wasn't going to be there. And I think that was really helpful to us because it sort of took it down to a snapshot of what we could expect to see over the next 8 weeks. We modeled that on different levels of occupancy ranging from 10 up to 50%. To understand what capture would be, and we're not going to operate with facials to begin with, so take out the retail component and how does that look? It was a strong enough case to present to our ownership group, and they said, yeah, let's rock and roll. But one of the questions that the providers had, and certainly the ownership had, was, are you staggering the appointments? And to, I think Frank's point, we are using 2 rooms per provider so that we can sanitize one as we flip over into the other. And we're taking a very measured approach in limited hours of operation, limited days of operation, keeping the team really small, and then flipping that team out so that the one team's working on one day, the next team works on the other day. So that if we do have some kind of outbreak of the virus, that we could quarantine that team and still have a team in place to be able to move forward. So that's some of the stuff that we've been able to do, and hopefully it will be successful.
Thank you for that, Ella. Ella, I want to come to you on a question from Paul Wright that I think ties in nicely to this conversation about some financial tips, because he's specifically asking about how we're budgeting and accounting for the cost of the PPE, the gloves, the disinfectant, the wipes, the turn time. So how are you building that into your budget? And if you have any other financial tips or that type of information, I'd love for you to share that with us.
We estimated that it would take about $5 to $10 more per service in all of the wrapped up stuff. What we found out, though, is that we overplanned. Some of our cleaning has been a little bit more efficient than we expected. There's been a lot less use in our public areas than we expected. And so that's been helpful. We've also had a lot of savings. We're not doing magazines. We're not doing newspapers. We're not doing elaborate snacks. We're not doing bottled water. We are doing bottled water, excuse me. So that at the end of the day, people aren't spending a lot of time and getting a lot of resources out. And so I think a good ballpark would be $5 to $10 or 5 to 10%, depending on what you charge for your massages, for extra expense. We've also, though, had a lot of pent-up demand for retail, believe it or not. And people are buying, especially their facial care and their body care. They could have gotten it online, but they didn't. And so that's been a positive. And we just do 15 minutes between treatments, and we found that works well because we have a substance that takes 10 minutes to cure, to fix, and that's working really well. It's almost a balance, almost. We don't have a lot of dead time. I know the tendency is to bring in as many therapists as you can and then hope that you can catch the business. And like Alan was saying, you want to be very careful not to do that because dead time costs you money. And if you bring in the right mix, and you'll find that quickly, you'll be fully booked the entire time. It's very efficient. And the only way to increase the business is if the therapist would like to add on at the top or the bottom of their schedule, which some are choosing to do. And so I would recommend that highly.
So a follow-up question for you, Ella. On the cost of the PPE that you spoke about, are you running that as a separate line item on your budget, or are you folding it into your operational expenses? How are you making that stand out so that you know what that is come 2021 budgeting time? Absolutely.
In fact, we chose to do that as a company. And so our purchasing director researched while most of us were furloughed. She worked with a group of us to come up with what we would be going with as a company so we could buy in bulk. And then she orders it for us and we pull it from the warehouse so that it's very measured so that you don't have a lot of different departments getting their own favorite kind of anything. And that's been very helpful, very measured. And one thing I would caution you to do is to not overbuy in PPE. None of us know what next month is going to bring or the following month. And if you buy too much and you have to shut down until there's a vaccine, you're going to be stuck with this stuff at the end of the year or whenever that happens to be. So we have good relationships with our vendors, and we're confident that we can get it on a month-to-month basis. Your tendency is going to want to hoard it and buy as much as you can, and I would caution you against that.
That's great information. Scott, I want to come to you on the information about budgeting that Ella did bring up. In your business model, did you have to rebudget your 2020 year or reforecast your 2020 year because of the impact of COVID?
Well, I think we had a similar, I guess you could say, epiphany that Ella did, which is, yeah, you certainly are going to be taking some kind of a margin hit when it comes to the PPE, which is not really extraordinarily expensive when you talk about the face masks and the shields, and then the extra layers of bedding and the disinfectant sprays is not really that big of an expense. But for us, with the reopening, now we have reopened, just for clarity, we have reopened for hair services. We have not reopened for spa service. We're anticipating that this Friday. But when we looked at that model, the reality is there are going to be, at least for the next few weeks, services that or amenities that we're not going to be providing. And it somewhat offsets that cost. You know, we don't have the lockers open for robe usage and for showers and that massive towel usage and so on and so forth. We have the locker rooms open, of course, for bathroom usage and hand washing, right? So in the same thing, it's going to be a little more controlled in terms of our edible foods that we have, the fruit and all that we'd carry in the quiet room. So I think that it somewhat offsets it. I think the biggest concern and hit for us will be the time gap between the services. We're going to be allocating a half hour, and we're actually shortening our day, cutting a few hours off in the evening and in the morning just to kind of reduce the flow into the spa, at least for the first couple weeks. But in our model, it might be quite different from Ella's, because us being a day spa, we're looking just to make $1. It doesn't matter. We just want anybody in our space, because we don't get revenue from any other place besides our online sales, right, or gift certificate sales. So for us, it doesn't matter, you know, and not to mention that half-hour gap time is a small price to pay to help the esthetician or massage therapist feel comfortable in their space, to be able to disinfect properly, to take care of their own health and step out of the building from wearing the face mask for an hour or hour and a half at a time. And it helps keep the guests the safest as well. So it's a small price to pay. So we really can't really factor that in. It is what it is, and we have to do what we have to do. So
I do agree with you on that, Scott. And I think something that Ella alluded to is that as we become accustomed to the new normal, the time between treatments may not need to be 30 minutes as our associates become more efficient in sanitizing, in moving through those processes. And I do think, are you building in breaks for your therapist to take the mask off for breath breaks with the mask in that 30 minutes?
Yeah, well, that would be within the same 30 minutes. Now, what I would encourage everybody to do is look at how this is going to extrapolate this thought out, you know, several weeks ahead. We have a phasing program for spa gregories in terms of the first 2 weeks, then following 2 weeks, what are we going to do, and so on and so forth, and how do we expand that or reduce that gap time? Because one thing that I think we're all experiencing, of course, and none of us, I mean, at least myself, I don't love a lot of change. I like change. I like good change, but I don't like waking up every morning and having a completely different perspective every day to run business. You know, it's very frustrating. So, but that said, things do change. Like Ella said, don't invest so much into the PPE that you're going to be sitting on a large bundle of it when, or if something dramatically changes. I mean, from day to day, it is really a dramatic change. So I think it's really important for people to take a look at what that means in your own phasing process, the first 2 weeks, the following 2 weeks, and have some perspective of where you're going to go with it. Because we do plan on opening up full 9 to 9 p.m., you know, the full day services in our phase 2, and then starting to reduce that gap time back to 15 minutes in our phase 3, so on and so forth. So it's good to take a look at that so you don't get yourself ahead of the game and think that you're doing the right thing and buy things in bulk like I was talking about, or do something extraordinary in that way. So
that's fantastic. Alan, can you talk about if in your process of reopening, if you also had to go through a rebudgeting or reforecasting for the year? And what was your approach to that? And what did you use to define what those new benchmarks would be?
So, good question.
Michelle afterwards.
Yeah, as part of the initial business case that we developed, we looked at it through the rest of the year and said, so obviously we're going to need to reforecast, rebalance, as did the entire hotel. Like Ella, we folded the additional expense into the controllables, but we're tracking that separately, to your point, to be able to cater to it in 2021 when we start to budget. It's what we found is that we're almost coming out level pegged. We have not reduced our prices, and it's not our intent to reduce the prices. We use a yield pricing model in this particular location, so we have more expensive treatments on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We haven't had any resistance on the initial bookings, so we're going to stay with that. And I think a lot of people realize this is not the time that you're going to get a discounted spa service, right? So yeah, that's how we're handling it from this point of view.
That's great. Michelle, I know from your perspective, you oversee multiple locations. How did you approach the budgeting process? I know you probably had to work with different ownership groups, different hotel groups.
Right.
Process in terms of that?
We, in our 12 locations, we did, prior to any reopening, had to present to either the ownership or asset management group a viable reforecast and budget. And I think that was kind of our key point of relook at our business and make sure it's viable, make sure the revenues that we're demanding are taking into account the capacity and what we're really going to see, but then also making sure hours of operation, to Alan's point, we phase in and start out slow and safe and really get it down and then go to the next phase and then the next phase. So for every reopening on a management contract, we have had to do that, and we will do that for our leases. And because, like Scott, we are a small company, as a company, we have reforecasted into 2022 because it is all about the cash flow gain to us. We need to make sure that we have viability as a company. So we are looking weekly at not only our properties, but our company as a whole to make sure that we are ahead of the game and what is coming. Because it's, as everyone has said, every day you wake up to a brand new world. So
that's very true.
We're extreme urgency.
That's very true. I know from Montage, we are constantly in the act of reforecasting and adjusting to what the occupancy of the hotels are. We, in most of our locations, do have a local component. And in some cases that will be opening with the hotel, in some cases after the hotel opens, but we are in a constant state of reforecasting, which I think as an industry, we should become really accustomed and adept at reforecasting our business model, have real cash flow on hand to operate the business. Frank, I want to come to you because I think on the resource partner side, with the shifting in resources, with the shifting in budgeting, how are you on the resource partner side adjusting your business to the real-time shifts that are happening on the ground in terms of available resources for resource partners and for purchases from your current accounts?
Well, we sort of helped our accounts during, we didn't lay anyone off on our team. And so we really wanted to be there for our clients and actually helped assist when, you know, they didn't have people to actually turn over days and do end of day procedures and things like that. So we were helping maintain that, as well as helping them actually come out of it in a stronger position. So what we did was we sort of said, look, we'll make these enhancements, but you don't have to pay us until you've already opened for over a month. But these things can now help you drive more revenue online through mobile and through all these other channels, which is really important. And I feel like guests are going to be coming back to your spas with all new expectations. And so the ability to deliver the kind of guest experience, obviously the clean, safe treatment in a spa, but anywhere else where it can be touchless, in the sense of I don't want to have to touch a keypad or a tablet to put in my health questionnaire or to check into my treatment. You know, any of those things, even things like digital keys in the rooms and all kinds of different areas. There's lots of opportunity where technology can sort of help. And so we're working with clients to achieve those things so that they can deliver an experience to the guests that the guests are now, like even a simple thing like a spa menu. I know I was talking with Ella, and they have a QR code that'll bring up the menu right on your mobile device. It could be in a mobile app. So there's a lot of things that, you know, as guests come back, a lot of things we took for granted that now they just may not want to touch. So anything you can help to achieve that. And that's what we've been been helping our clients and responding to their needs.
That's great. Ella, I had a question in regards to what Frank just brought up. Have you done sort of cost benefit analysis of upgrading to touchless and other technologies that we're looking at implementing across the board, and how that impacts your cash flow and your bottom line?
So Patrick, can you repeat the first part? I'm sorry, I lost you for a sec.
Oh yeah, yes. So have you done a cost benefit analysis of upgrading to things like touchless check-in, check-out, and other technologies that are coming out to support our businesses in the new world that we live in?
Yes, we have. And we actually work with Frank, and we have Resort Suite here, and we were doing some of the things that he was talking about, getting ready. But unfortunately, something like going to a new key system or a different kind of a way to collect your revenue is, at a big widespread resort, it's not, your spa can't just do it. It's got to be everyone. And when you're faced with a year like 2020, it's not something that we're going to invest in. And it's like, darn, if we'd just done it in 2019, we'd look really good right now. And so I think you have to pick and choose what's going to make the biggest impact, and how can you work around what you're kind of stuck with. And that's what we've been doing. So the QR codes have been amazing. We don't even have menus in the restaurants. It's a QR code based system. I don't see going back to having collateral in the rooms. Why would we? It's very expensive. People just throw them out, or they get dirty with coffee on them or something. So there are a lot of things that I think are to our benefit. We're kind of educating, people in my age group who are just a little slow to adopt some of that stuff. Now we have to. And so we can take advantage of that in the future to help drive higher profits when things are back to normal.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Alan, on your side, at Marriott, how are you guys addressing the technology piece that we're being almost to move into because of where the world is going? How do you guys address that in terms of a cost benefit analysis, and does it make sense for your business right now?
So luckily for us, we've been using the QR code for menus for some time now, which has worked out really well for us. You're probably saving $10,000, $12,000 a year on menu printing. So that's been a big issue. We're set up so that we can do a contactless check-in and a contactless check-out. And we've gone a lot more and become a lot more reliant on online reservations as opposed to taking the calls, and simply you don't have the personnel to take the calls anymore. So that's been a cost saving for us as well. So transferring to digital, I'm a huge fan. I'm not a person who really likes to talk to people when I'm making reservations and stuff. I want to have control, a control freak, I guess. But that's helped us save a lot of money and allowed me to bask in my self-control.
That's fantastic. I'll come to you, Scott, with the same question. In your model, how are you looking at bringing technology to support the business?
We would love to. In fact, I'm familiar with Frank's model as well. I think Frank is definitely one of the leaders in our industry. I'm giving Frank some kudos because we did look at Resort Suite at a certain point. But to Ella's point, is transitioning right now into different software program, or even upgrading the software program we currently have, is a monumental task, as we all know, and there's expense behind it. And right now, I think the name of the game for at least our type of business is revenue and mitigating expenses right now. So I think the only thing that we have the opportunity to do at this moment is to figure it out, and to work within the system that we currently have, and to do it right, and to do it well and mindfully and respectfully to the community, for the community. But we don't foresee putting out any unnecessary expenses for some time until we all get back on our feet.
It does seem like there is a tension between the need to modernize, upgrade, embrace technology, but also be mindful of the true economic situation of cash flow in most businesses right now. May prohibit that. So I think Frank's approach in terms of, we can do this for you, we'll look at the payment later, is a very smart plan that benefits both the spa operator and the resource partner, having a longer view in terms of what that relationship can yield for both people. Michelle, I have the same question for you. I know, again, you're having to manage many different locations. So how are you handling this question about the cost of technology, the need to do it, and having it make financial sense for your many different locations?
I think much to Alan's point, trying to save off of the printed collateral, those days and those $10,000, $12,000 a year on something printed, I think those are probably gone. and trying to get ourselves as digitally advanced as we can. If we had current platforms in place, making sure we utilize those for guest waivers and RX cards and things like that. But also to Scott's point, for other locations that don't have the budgets for that, how do you reside within the confines of our current situation? And that's, you know, laminating things and making sure they're wiped down and making sure the guests still feel safe and comfortable, and not putting, I'm like a broken record, the viability of our company at risk, trying to make sure that we're so digitally advanced. So it's a very fine line, but I think the future is digital.
Is there, and I'll start with you, Michelle, since we're here together.
Okay.
You've alluded to it. Can you talk about how you've modified your treatment menu? I know oftentimes we can be guilty of very long, complex menus.
No.
And I think editing is a gift that we have all inherited in the current time we live in. So, and I'm going to ask each of you on the call to answer this question, because I'm sure there will be different approaches based upon your business model. But can you talk about how you have edited, or if you have edited your offerings to make more sense in the current time?
I think the first round of edits was a review of what you had on your menu that may, you know, the four-handed massages now no longer are on a menu, and different things that may have had questionable sanitation under the new world. Those are gone. Different locations, facials aren't coming back for us, but massages are, so that editing of menus. And looking at what we can highlight as immune boosting, because we all know that that is something that's very important to our guests right now. So streamlining what is important to the guest and what we can safely and efficiently and effectively do. So we have done edits across the board at all locations.
That's great. And Scott?
Sorry about that. No, I feel the same way. We had to obviously edit on the short term. Long term, not going to be a change within the menu of services that we provide, but in the short term, we have eliminated the hydrotherapy type services, body scrubs, body wraps, those types of services. But you know, the menu didn't really matter. When we looked at our wait list that we have been accumulating for several months now, and we've been actually calling clients this past week to get them all in line and booked. Our menu doesn't really matter. They all want the same thing. They all want a massage, right? It hasn't been a big issue with us. There might have been a couple people who wanted to have body scrubs or wraps, but they all want to get back into their skincare routine, and they all want to get their nails done, and they all want to get a massage. So the three basics are very prevalent. So the answer is yes, we've modified the offerings temporarily, but long-term, we're going to keep everything that we currently had.
You said something very interesting that I want to follow up with you on. Part of your strategy in terms of marketing your business has been to reach out directly to your past customers. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, so what we have been doing since March 17th, since we have closed, we have been keeping a running list, a wait list, if you will, of clients who cannot get in for services. Oddly enough, during the pandemic, we have had calls on a daily basis, even in the worst of times through the pandemic, of people coming to get a massage, which really struck me as very odd, but it is what it is. So we kept a very strong list. We have a list that will keep us viable for at least the next few upon reopening. So from a marketing perspective, I don't think we're going to need to put any extraordinary marketing effort into discounting, or I think people are just absolutely thrilled to want to come back in. And with that due diligence that our staff has done and kept those lists, it's going to be probably a pretty easy first cut to get people through the door.
So because I have you, I had a question come through as to why you're not offering body scrubs. What is your thinking behind that?
Well, it's just the complexity. You know, I mean, when first off, with these services specifically, the mandate right now through California is that a massage therapist and the client must wear a mask full-time, face up or face down. And we figured out some ways to modify that just a bit. But with the esthetician, it's suggested that they have obviously a face shield or sneeze guard in addition to that. Well, if you imagine this happening into a steamy, hot, a wet room where they're doing body scrubs and wraps, it doesn't seem like it would be an easy task. And I think it really compromises the safety, because I think the likelihood of somebody just flipping their mask off like they can't take it anymore, I think it's a real thing, right? So why complicate it when it's not necessary right now? And the demand, like I said, we have enough requests for massages to last us at least for the next few weeks. So no need to complicate the issue as it stands right now under the guidance of the state of California.
That's great. Alan, coming to you on the menu question, if you've had to edit down your offerings and what you've taken off the menu, would be very helpful.
So it's interesting, with the phased approach that we're reopening, we've literally eliminated everything off the menu with the exception of massage. So leading with massage for the foreseeable future, next 2 to 3 weeks. Facials primarily because can we really guarantee the safety of both the provider and the guest? Probably not at this point in time. Nails we elected to take off just because the profit line, quite frankly, is so low on nails that there's the potential to blow out what profit you might make. We again did the same as Scott took off the polishes and the scrubs. We've taken a little bit, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but we've taken an approach of more wellness as opposed to cosmetic. So we're not doing hair, we're not doing nails, we're really focusing on what people want. It's 76% of my business is massage, so might as well go that way. What we did do and realize that we're going to lose, I run at about 15, 16% retail. So we bought back, when we were bringing the team back, we bought back a beauty coach. So it's somebody that will stand in the lobby, be able to assist with phone calls and checkouts, but is also well versed in being able to sell retail and provide that level of expertise to the guests. So.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And so you're using retail as a way to offset the loss you would see from nails, from facials, et cetera.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, and I run a business, my business is 50% local and 50% hotel guests. So we're very mindful and doing outreaches as Scott suggested he's doing as well. But it's important to be able to keep the retail, and we're also offering freight or posting it out with no charge, so that it's sort of contactless again.
And as you're reaching out, what are you marketing to people as you reach out? Are you marketing safety? Are you marketing a return to normal? How are you crafting your marketing message as you go to?
So we're phrasing it as the new normal today, because it may be a new normal tomorrow. So that's the message we're sending out. We're lucky that we live here, we're situated in downtown, so we have lots of complex and apartment blocks around us. We have great relationships with all of them. So it's a little bit, we're back in the new us. It's a very simple, clean message. We haven't focused too much on the safety issue because I think everybody should be taking for granted that safety is being conducted, right? So rightly or wrongly, that's the way we're going.
That's great, thank you. Ella, I come to you with the same question. How have you guys modified your menu, your treatment offering in this time?
Well, we haven't been that conservative. I think basically the wet treatments like Scott talked. We also had a dry buff. Certainly we don't want dead skin cells floating around, that kind of thing. But otherwise, in a resort setting, nails and hair, and they're all kind of a part of the experience and what people expect if they're going to do fine dining and that kind of thing. So we didn't feel like we could take it off without taking a real hit on our reputation as a spa. So we've left them on. We have some good protocols in place and some plexiglass separators, and all wearing shields. In fact, all of our therapists and our people in the salon are wearing shields in addition to masks. And we feel relatively safe. None of our guests are wearing masks. It's not a requirement in Georgia. And none of our guests in the entire hotel, none's not fair. But the overwhelming majority of our guests just want to be back to normal. And so that's been difficult to manage. It's just been a hard message. But we continue to reinforce that with our staff, both back in the house on shuttles and when they're dining together, all that kind of stuff. We're very strict with our staff, and I think that's been successful. Can I jump in here with something around be careful what you wish for? When you reopen, if you've been closed, and all of a sudden you turn the pipeline to your reservation system, unless you were smart and converted to an online system, you're going to be inundated with calls, and the calls are going to last twice or 3 times as long as before because they're going to want to ask you all these questions. And so one place you cannot skimp is in your reservations. Have everybody back and have them answering, and be very cautious about the inventory you put out there because it's going to sell out very quickly.
I do have a follow-up question to what you just said, Ella. Relating really to, again, people have to weigh the benefit of the cost of that receptionist coming back or reservationist coming back with the revenue they're booking on those phone calls. So I think that's a very important strategy for people, particularly when you're dealing with a GM or an ownership group, that, you know, this receptionist books $10,000 a day in business. It's worth the hourly wage they make to have them come in to do that for us. I think that's a great piece. Can you talk about, Ella, your approach to pricing? I know there are some people who are doing discounts or some who are doing COVID increases or surcharges. What has been your approach to pricing in this time?
We left pricing exactly where it is, and that's not just in the spa, that's resort-wide. The reality is, no, we didn't have steam room open at first, and you can only stay 30 minutes before and after your treatment, but it's more expensive to operate in this environment. And honestly, we've gotten maybe at 1 or 2% of pushback from our guests. They know, they're very grateful we're open, and they seem to be more understanding. As time has gone by in the last 2 weeks, I'm seeing that fray a little bit. People are a little bit more needy when they come and they expect more. But we're already a price leader, and you know, it's very hard to recover from a discount mentality with your guests. Once you go there, it takes a long time to push it back. And I know from the Great Recession, many of us learned the lesson that we didn't want to do that again. And so if you don't have to, don't. Demand is there right now for our clientele. So don't cut off your profit.
Right. And Alan, how has your approach been to your pricing in this?
And leaving our pricing exactly where it is. We haven't changed. We've maintained our yield pricing, so less expensive in the early part of the week to accommodate local area guests, more expensive on the weekends, which is aimed at our leisure guests, typically those that are staying in the hotel. It's not our intent to reduce the prices, nor is it our intent to discount. And I agree with Ella, it's a very slippery slope and a hell of a one to climb back up if you're trying to get out of that discount mindset.
And I'll ask you this question that has come through on the chat. In this reopening phase, have you reworked commission structures or things of that nature with your associates, or have you left that pay structure in place?
Absolutely as is. Yeah, we didn't change it at all. I'm not sure it would be fair to penalize the associates that are doing the heavy lifting through no fault of their own. They've had a hard time as it's been. So yeah, the last thing they would need is for us to decrease their salaries. Absolutely.
And Scott, how have you approached your pricing in your business model?
Well, again, I think that the pricing has not changed. We're not going to hit that topic until we get through, you know, the first, I guess, phase, because it seems like we have enough demand to not have to discount. That said, we definitely are locked and loaded and ready to go with multiple layers of discount here, spa saver membership deals. I mean, we have it all lined up just in case we hit a wall, but we have not. That said, we did have to cut off some commissions. During the time frame, there was a time frame that we just could not afford to pay commissions from the perspective of we pay commissions to technicians almost ongoing if a client has seen that technician. But during our closed state, we have had to recover some of those commissions to help us keep the lights on, frankly. But what we did to counteract that, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at this, if you're sitting on dead inventory that just is not moving, that has a very slow turn rate, what we did, we solicited this to all of our clientele, where we put this out there as a therapist relief fund. And we sold these products online, and what that allowed, it was a triple win, really. The client would purchase an item, and we received our money back, the money we put into that product. So it opened up a little bit of cash flow. And then the proceeds from that, on that product, would go into a therapist relief fund that we kick back to the therapists who are out of work to help them pay their rent and buy food, frankly, some of them. And then the client walked away feeling fulfilled because they actually received a product. So we tried to figure out a way to move dead inventory in a way where we weren't profiting from it, but we were recovering our initial investment on it and putting that money back into the therapist program is what we did. But that said, it more than balanced it out, let's say that. But we were trying to be extraordinarily creative in terms of moving some things that are just sitting here.
And I think that's great what you said, because we can still be humane and do the right thing by our associates and still be financially smart in reducing the balance sheets of old or slow moving inventory, which I think is really important.
And I'll say this, if I can add to that, is that we had an extraordinary feedback from all of our guests when we put that out there. They supported that. I mean, if anybody out there is looking for an opportunity, that is a fantastic one. It's a goodwill opportunity for the clients, and they all want to give back. They want to support that local spa, right? And our online store blew up. I mean, we sold through stuff that's been sitting there for months that we can't sell, and it was fantastic because they were doing something to help support the therapist. In addition, they were buying additional items, and they were also leaving tips for those therapists that they haven't seen in some time. So it opened up a floodgate of opportunity for those clients. So I would recommend looking at something like that.
That's great. Michelle, I'm going to come to you, and then I'll go for each of you on this. We're almost at the end of our time. It has flown today. What are your top 2 tips financially for people reopening their businesses in the current situation? Michelle, I'll start with you.
Okay, perfect. Probably realism. Optimism, I know we all are optimistic people. It's just in our nature. But when you're doing your forecasting and reopening, a viable business is the most important thing. So be realistic. Try and take the emotion out of it. There are a lot of, on my end, there have been a lot of emotional decisions, as you have to make them for the long-term viability of the company and of the property if you're at a hotel. So not taking anything personally and knowing that we have our employee partners' best interests at heart, and making sure you're very transparent with your team.
That's great. Ella, your thoughts?
Yeah, you want to staff for the business you have going forward for the next 6 months or so. You want to be cautious, for us, June and July are like, oh my God, to make as much money as you can. But be careful about adding staff or adding especially full-time staff. Again, I started out with this, but we don't know what's going to happen next month or the next month, and you want to be more cautious. If you have to lay off people, and that's an unfortunate thing, but you want to make sure that you're getting in the middle of where you need to be, so that you're cautious, but you're taking advantage of the pent-up demand. And so it's a real fine balance. But be very careful, because it's going to feel really boom, boom, boom for a while, and your tendency is going to be, oh, I need more therapists, or I need more of this, I need more of that. I would caution you to wait a couple of months and see what it looks like in September and October before you commit to more people that might be disappointed down the road.
Thank you. And Alan, your final thoughts on this?
So mine would be twofold. One would be absolutely build a plan. Make sure you have a business case. Make sure you get the buy-in from your GM and your finance business partners, and stick to the plan. But stick to the plan in a way where you're still malleable and flexible. You've got to roll with the punches. Every day is different, and keep those partners in constant communication. Your GM, your resident manager, whoever it is, your finance partner. Let them know what's going on and coming down the turnpike. Because, like everyone, they got to look after cash flow and owner expectations and stuff like that. So, yeah, absolutely, build a plan, but remain flexible.
Thank you. And Frank, I'm going to come to you for your final thoughts on financial tips, and then I'll hand it over to you to wrap us up today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I would say really is understanding the flow of, there's going to be a surge at the beginning, and we're seeing that with our clients, and Ella and everyone kind of described it. And so understanding that, I mean, there's going to be a first wave of people wanting, again, to get their hair and nails done, but then beyond that, really looking at the next wave of the avid spa goers who really want that massage and everything else. So it's looking beyond, all of those phases, and then understanding that mix of treatments, that mix, from a profitability perspective is going to be so important. And so, understanding your business, understanding what drives your profitability, what drives revenue, and what even drives retail. So, looking at the mix of services, it's not just the margin on the on the service, but it's also the kinds of treatments that may drive more retail sales. So really analyze that to fully understand. So the more that you have in that plan that you can put in place, and I'd say finally also that, we're kind of all in this together, right? So when all of your stakeholders, your owners and your investors, to your staff and your clients, we're all invested in making sure that this business is going to be successful. So more time than any time, I think that that's true. And I think that it's not just the health of our staff and the health of our clients, but it's the financial health of our business, right? That's just as important for everyone involved. So really it is, you know, everyone's in it together. So with that, I mean, I think this has been just a great discussion. Thank you, Patrick, for moderating, and all of our great panelists here, and all of you for attending. I'd also once again like to thank Circadia and ReadyCare. And if you look at the slide, we've announced the winners of some of their gift baskets that they're providing. And so if you want, speak to our staff will follow up with you if your name is on the slide, just to coordinate getting those prizes to you. And finally, just a reminder that everyone, you know, the ISPA Reopening Town Hall Series, this is going to run every Wednesday at 2 o'clock through July 8th. And next week's topic is going to be sort of innovative ideas and revenue boosters. So we hope you're all able to join us then. And, you know, on behalf of everyone here at ISPA, our moderator, Patrick Huey, and all our wonderful panelists, I just want to thank you all for attending today.